I realize a lot of my audience is probably ex-Jehovah's Witness and was never engaged in politics. Like, never. It was forbidden. In a lot of cults, that's the case. And in other cults, it's forbidden to not be engaged in politics. So forgive me if you guys already know this information, but I feel that it's important to disseminate for the ones who don't know it. Since I left Jehovah's Witnesses behind, I've been heavily involved in politics. I felt like it was a civic duty, and it's something that I wasn't allowed to do as a Jehovah's Witness. And that means I want to do it. So, I know our electoral system, our election system, can get really confusing sometimes. And that's why I wanted to pose this opportunity for anybody in the YouTube chat or anybody listening right now. If you had any questions about how the government is run or how elections operate or anything like that, then feel free to ask. Just if you're in the YouTube chat, at Telltale Podcast, and ask me a question about it. And if I don't know the answer, then we'll figure it out together. The website I went to here is called 270towin.com. The premise of this website is you need 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. It's not actually a democracy that we live in, technically. Like, the U.S. isn't made up of a democracy. It's a representative democracy. It's a republic. A democratic republic, I think, is what it's called, technically. Each state kind of operates its own government. So at the very top of the structure, the United States has a president and a vice president. That makes up the executive branch. A whole bunch of other organizations underneath the executive branch exist also. Like, the military is under the executive branch. That's controlled by the president. Everything under the executive branch is controlled by the president. The military, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, I believe all of those organizations are executive branch and controlled by the president. Then we have the legislative branch. That's made up of Congress. Congress is Senate and the House of Representatives. Each state has 2 senators. So right now there are 50 states. That means we have 100 senators, right? And the representatives, the House of Representatives, that's actually split up completely differently into different districts. I think my state has 3 districts. So we have 3 representatives in the House. There are a total of 438 representatives in the House of Representatives. The reason I remember these numbers right off the top of my head is because I go to 538.com a lot. It tracks polls and has a lot of political information that's really useful. 538 is the number of representatives in Congress. That's the Senate and the House. 538. And since we have 100 senators, that means 438 of the representatives are House of Representatives members. So basically what happens is each district votes, like each district within each state votes for who they want. And the person that wins those districts sends their vote on to the higher ups. And then they tally all of those votes together for the states. And whoever wins the most districts in that state wins that state. So right now we're counting how many states are toss-ups, for example. This map that we have here is a consensus of all the different polling agencies that are out there. It has 538.com. These are their estimates for each individual state. We have The Economist, we have Politico, Inside Elections, Cook Political Report, just a whole bunch. This right here is the 2020 consensus of all of the polls, basically, and all of the polling websites. So right now, the light blue ones, the very light blue ones, are the states that are likely to turn blue. The brown ones are toss-ups. We don't know what's going to happen in those states. The polling is so close, it could go to either Biden or Trump. Ohio, Iowa, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida are toss-up states. The dark red and dark blue are pretty likely going to Trump and Biden respectively. Like West Virginia, for example, my state, I don't think it's ever gone blue. It will always be red, most likely. It's very red. Every district voted for Trump in 2016. And it's the same with California. California will almost certainly always be blue. It's very big, very populous. Same with New York. New York and California both have big cities, and cities tend to lean blue. You have to have one half of the state's representatives' votes to win the presidency. That means since there are 538, you have to have one half plus one, which is 270. You have to have 270 electoral votes to win. Each state, as I said, has a different number of representatives. New York has 29, California has 55, Florida has 29. Different number of representatives, different number of senators, so on and so forth. So at this immediate moment, Biden is favored to win the election. He's almost guaranteed to get at least 270. Right now, I think they estimated that his chance of winning, of getting more than 270 electoral votes, is like 86% or something. Trump has a 14% chance of winning the election based on, how many states are polling above a certain number and things like that. Ultimately, the electoral vote, like our votes, the Democratic vote, how many people in the U.S. vote for Biden versus vote for Trump is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. The Democrats basically always win the popular vote. More people in the United States vote Democrat than Republican almost every single time. The reason that they set it up like this with like the complicated electoral vote process and everything was to protect the minority from the majority. If it was majority rules in the U.S., it would be a Christian nationalist state right now. Because at some point in the past 200 years, Christians outnumbered secularists. So the electoral system does have its benefits. Switching over to a popular vote has its benefits too. But do you want to live in a system that protects the minority from the majority? I do. I like the electoral system. It's just been hijacked by fucking propagandists, right-wing extremists. It's been hijacked by it. Billionaires have to invest a proportionally small amount of money, considering how much they have, to own the government. They don't have to buy every single vote in the country. They don't have to buy one half of the votes. They have to buy enough votes to have a controlling share in the country, basically. So I like the electoral system. I think that the minority should be protected from the majority. We just have to put in safeguards to prevent people from taking advantage of it like this. It's been corrupted, this electoral system that was set up to protect people. It's been taken advantage of and corrupted. So I don't want to throw out the electoral system necessarily. I just want to find a way to prevent billionaires and right-wing extremists from taking advantage of it. I'll tell you what, let me take a quick glance at the questions, if you guys had any, because I know I do have Jehovah's Witnesses who've never been invested in this. Do we really need the Electoral College? What is its function? Joshua the Meme Man. I appreciate that question. The Electoral College is designed to protect the minority from the majority. And we need a system that does that. Absolutely need a system that does that. I like that aspect of it. But it's been corrupted. We need to find a way to fix it so that it can't be corrupted by billionaires like that and right-wing extremists. Right? Any extremists. It shouldn't be corrupted by extremists, period. Neltzy, why only 2 candidates and no independent ones? Because we have something called the first-past-the-post voting system. In this election, we have Donald Trump and we have Joe Biden, right? Let's say we had Gary Johnson and Mike Gravel also and Jill Stein. So 5 people total, right? Gravel, Stein, Johnson, Trump, Biden. People want to vote for the winner. There's some kind of a bizarre phenomenon where people don't like voting for somebody who's going to lose. So they will pick one of the winning candidates to try to add to that tally. So they'll have, instead of voting for Jill Stein, a preferred candidate for some people, they'll vote for Biden because they think he has a better chance of winning against Trump. That's what happens in a first-past-the-post system. If we had a ranked choice voting system, we would be a lot better off. Like, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein, but if she loses, then I want my vote to go to Joe Biden instead. If we had a system like that, people wouldn't be afraid to vote for who they really wanted, how they really felt. But since we have this first-past-the-post voting system, we're locked into this two-party system. It's one or the other. It's Democrats or Republicans. And it is very destructive to democracy to only have two choices like that. We need a ranked choice voting system, which, by the way, I think Maine has adopted that, at least for their primaries. And FYI, a primary happens about 6 months before the general election. A primary is intended to pick the candidate that will be going up against the Republican in the general election. So the Democrat primary had Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg and all that other stuff. If you're a registered Democrat, if you registered as a Democrat when you registered to vote, then you can vote in the Democrat primaries in your state. It changes from state to state. Sometimes you can get any ballot you want, whether you're registered that way or not. But the point is, you basically vote for the candidate that you want to face off against the final opposition party candidate. Primaries usually happen around March, April, or May, depending on which state you're in. They're all different. Free all GT. Can Trump really name electors faithful to him to force a vote in his favor? That's complicated. I don't know a whole lot about that. I know that is a concern. As far as I understand it, Trump can claim that there were some questions about what's happening in the election right now and force the vote to go to the House. And the way the House of Representatives is organized at this immediate moment, it would vote for Trump. Like the votes would add up to a Trump presidency. That is a possibility, but the court system is there for a reason. Biden has a huge coalition of lawyers intended to prevent people from pulling any shenanigans, so hope for the best. Sassy Emigurumi. I refreshed and Ohio is leaning toward red. As an Ohioan, I am disappointed. Don't be too disappointed. Ohio has been flipping back and forth. Most important thing you can do is go vote. Ohio will most likely go to Trump, but Ohio is ultimately going to be irrelevant in this very specific election because it only has 18 electoral votes. If Biden takes Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it's over for Trump. There's basically no way he can win. This is what happened in 2016, and these states have been the same since the year 2000. Arizona has been red since like the 80s or something. I mean, look at these states. The fact that in the consensus Arizona is leaning blue is a phenomenally good sign. Biden will almost certainly win this election. That's what it looks like right now. If he has enough votes and enough push, he can't lose. There's nothing that Trump can do to overturn it without just straight up being a dictator.